Our second passage is from Psalm 4. Answer me when I call, O God of my right. You gave me room when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. How long, you people, shall my honor suffer shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Selah. But know that the Lord has set apart the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. When you are disturbed, do not sin. Ponder it on your beds and be silent. Selah. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, "Oh, that we might see some good. Let the light of your face shine on us, O Lord. You have put gladness in my heart, more than when their grains and wines abound. I will both lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, O Lord, make me lie down in safety." And so my sermon today is the power of Selah. And so Selah is a musical notation, and that is being incorporated into the Psalms, which in this particular psalm, and what it means is pause and go back. It means pay attention. Sometimes it's a line that ends up being repeated. And so I want to start by looking at these lines that the psalmist is saying, slow down, pay attention, maybe repeat this one again. How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? No, really. How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Because don't we seek after lies? And don't we tell ourselves lies? We forget what is here in this previous passage, which is, beloved, we are God's children now. What we will be has not yet been revealed. But how often do we have a different narrative in our head? You know, whether that narrative was placed by a bully on the school ground or someone that we loved and was trying to get us to behave or grow up or strive to be better, don't all of us have that judgmental voice in our heads where we speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to a friend? That we never speak to a stranger, that perhaps we might speak to an enemy. When Jesus says we are to love God with all of our being, that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves, that we are to love our enemies. Okay, bundled up in that we gloss over is we should love ourselves. But so often, the way we talk to ourselves reflects a very different attitude. How are we going to heal? How are we going to grow if we keep undermining ourselves with the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves? How do we love ourselves? How do we express that we are God's children now, and what is to come is yet to be revealed? What we are growing into is yet to be revealed. How do we grow when the words we speak to ourselves is full of dismissal, denial, of anger and frustration and sometimes self-loathing. How are we in covenant with one another when we won't even be in covenant with ourselves? Beloved, we are God's children now, called to something greater. If we tell stories about ourselves that emphasize our failures, and certainly we need to own up, confess the moments where we fall short of what God is calling us to be. As the kids say, apologize when we do wrong. Yes. But don't forget you're a beloved child of God, called in love for transformation. Are we telling stories about one another and about ourselves in eager hope for transformation, a belief that we are capable of following the path that God has placed before us? Because so often when we tell ourselves, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm not enough of this, I'm not enough of that, what we're doing is we're denying our ability to follow God's call. So we got to love ourselves. We've got to have faith that if God has put the call before us, that God knows what God's doing, and that we are capable of being God's people, of loving ourselves and loving our neighbors, of loving God. See how this is an expansion outward from self to neighbor? The neighbors right close to us, and then the neighbors down the road, and then the neighboring villages and states and communities and all through the planet. And at the absolute extension is a love of God and God's creation. And along the way, there are people we want to leave out. So Jesus is very clear. And your enemies too, because maybe this point in another one of the Psalms where we're hoping God will anoint us in the presence of our enemies will maybe open our eyes to help us see that there are no enemies. Not in God's kingdom, which is all of creation. We are the ones that create enemies. God has beloved children that sometimes lose their path, sometimes lose their way. And hopefully, by remembering that we are all beloved children of God, remembering that everyone who does what is right is righteous. Because those people we call enemies, they're out there doing some things that are right. You know, they're not all bad. Just like those folks who call us their enemy. We know we're not all bad. We're doing some righteous things. Can we center on God's love? Can we pause and go back to what we know is true? Selah. How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? When you are disturbed, do not sin. Ponder it on your beds and be silent. Selah. So let's do that one again. When you are disturbed, do not sin. Ponder it on your beds and be silent. How often when somebody does something that hits us wrong, do we sit there and sin? Sin so often is acting as if we're separated from God. Christ Emmanuel, God with us. We feel forsaken. We feel divided. And so often when we feel that way, we want to divide again, divide from other people. Instead of pondering it on your beds and pondering it in our hearts and finding a way to heal and reconcile, so often we will lie on our beds and stew. And that just makes it worse. We feel justified. We feel hurt. And how many of us have had a little bitty tiny thing happen to us, and by the time we finish stewing on it for a bit, we're ready for that to end a relationship. We're ready to go to war with the other person. That's not the type of pondering the psalmist is calling us to do. The psalmist wants us to ponder the fact that we are in covenantal love with one another, that we are all children of God. We all make mistakes, and we are called to heal and to transform, to build community, to build relationships. So maybe what we're supposed to be pondering on our beds is, how can I heal this? Or how can I be part of the healing process? What do I need to do or say? How might I love more fully, more extravagantly, in the faith that transformation truly is possible? Is that how we ponder? Because I think if we ponder on that, we can do amazing things. I truly do. So we have these options: stewing on it, stirring the pot, and making it worse, or in covenantal love, sitting in discernment and saying, am I part of the problem? Maybe, maybe not. People have bad days. Can I find a way back to where I truly want to be? Where God wants us to be, in loving fellowship. There are many who say, oh, that we might see some good. Let the light of your face shine on us, O Lord. As if God's face isn't already shining on us. As if we're not already surrounded with beauty and blessings. Certainly we face hard times, and some people seem to get a triple portion of pain in this life. When we are hurting, it is hard to see the blessings. And I believe that that's one reason that we are to be in fellowship with one another, to walk alongside in our pain, to help one another make it through, to be with the way that Christ Emmanuel is with us. The psalmist says, all these people saying, when will good come to us? But God, you have put gladness in my heart, more than when grain and wine abound. We can find fellowship and love and hope, even in hard times. And sometimes we have to just look and stretch and remember. And our congregation is called to help one another remember the blessings around us. Selah. Let us ponder that. Blessings surround us. And we can walk with one another the way that Christ walks with us. That's a path of healing, a path of remembrance. a path of transformation, not only for us as individuals, but our community, our nation, and our world. May it be so.